great Rabbanim of yesteryear. Now today I want to speak about Rabbi Haim Moreh, who was a famous Persian Rabbi of his time and who would, let's just say, describe as an astonishing and would have constructive influence on Iranian Jewish culture, Judaism in of itself, especially through his Judeo-Persian writing, Persian texts in of its own right, where he would use actually the Hebrew alphabet and translations and commentaries on various religious subjects. And reported over that, I don't know if he had eyesight or not, he would have a broad influence in of its own rights, which would reverberate much further, let's just say, around the Jewish spheres all across the world. So let's explore a bit within regards to him. He was born on the 18th of Nisan in the year 5632. That was naturally in the year 1872. And that was in Tehran. He was born in Iran. And I think he was 2 years of age. And unfortunately, he suffered reported over here, reading from the Seven Dorim, famous website, which talks about Persian culture and Rabbanim and history. They say that he suffered a smallpox infection, which due to, let's say, lack of advanced medical facilities, unfortunately would cost him his sight over there. So that's what's reported over here on the website. So at the age of 7 years old, his father, Haj Mordechai ben Eliyahu Shirazi, sadly passed away. This was reported over here. Consequently, his maternal uncles and his grandfather took over the, let's say, the guardianship of Rabbi Haim and his little sister Mandani. They sent what would become the great rabbi to Mullah Dayan, who was a great Jewish great rabbi and a halakhic authority in Tehran, to study Torah, to study Judaical subjects. Rabbi Haim set out to learn the lessons by, let's say, with great perseverance, and obviously learn because had a sharper sense of hearing, because without the sight in of its own right, great genius. He was given a great genius ability and had a flair just there for learning great Torah textual information, and very, very interesting. The potential was absolutely magnanimous at that point in time. And I think when he was 20 years of age, Rabbi Haim Moreh got married to Rabbanit Lena Bolan-Dian, I think that was her name, and the couple brought one son and 3 daughters to the world, which is absolutely incredible. His son Abraham would grow up to become a great person in himself, affectionate within regards to Torah and Judaism in of its own right. He would be appointed eventually as a vice chair of the Tehran Jewish Association, which was a very prominent position at that point in time. Remember the hard workings that many of the great Persian leaders would do at that point in time, and the Persian rabbis in of itself. I believe the first Alliance Israelite school, Kol Yisrael Chavrim School, was opened in Tehran in the year 1898, and Haim Moreh was invited to teach the Torah subjects inside in Hebrew language at this school. So that's what's reported over. So I think when he was 26 years of age, he would begin teaching as a teacher. He not only taught, I think, just in this specific school, but also used this as an opportunity, let's just say a window, to learn the French language. He was very, very into learning and so on and so forth. So it's reported over here. Obviously, his great intelligence, great memory in of its own right, and learning gifts were, as the Seven Dorim website describes, simply incredible. He memorized at that point in time, reported over texts of the Torah in of itself, or the whole the Tehillim, the Zohar, all the tefillot in of its own right, as well as tefillot for the Chagim, for the holidays, and for other occasions also. He also, I think he would study worldly subjects also very much, and in the Jewish realms, and he'd be acquainted, or he would be familiar with also how to argue against other religions, to bring about the Jewish perspective with other things also. He was familiar with the various different philosophers, as well as being familiar with a lot of the different rabbis, great rabbis across the world. Philosophers also from Western and Eastern places, and was a master known as from the Persian literature himself. He would write poetry on occasion, so that's what we should point out over also. He was very, let's say, had an affection of the works of other people also. apparently he was well versed with regards to figures of great thought in Iranian literature in of its own right. So he was very familiar with that. I think also it's reported that his writings were often in two languages of Hebrew and French. Obviously, he was teaching an Alliance school that was a French-style school system at that point in time. And there was other famous Jewish figures that came from Iran, such as Shahin and Omrani, who we've spoken about before when we did a feature on the history of Persian Jewry. And that's something I have to point out. And his works itself were transcribed by various different aides in the Judeo-Persian style at the point in time. Persian language using the Hebrew alphabet itself, respectively. The title of his first work was inspired by his own name, the Derech Chaim, the Way of Life. This was published in 292 pages, I think in the year 1921. And it was about various different mitzvot, commandments, principles, to religion, let's just say in its own right, history of the world since the times of Adam Arishon, to more modern times, and there was brief reference to Jewish history and the lives of the great Nevi'im also inside this book that's published there. Anyone tuning in live at the moment, please subscribe to the channel. We are exploring the life of a great Persian Rabbi, Rabbi Haim Moreh, over here in this special edition over here. So welcome to our community, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel over here on this fantastic Thursday morning at time recording. Now, I think it was in the year 1924, he published his Gedolat Mordechai book, The Greatness of Mordechai, which would encompass 494 pages. The title, which was, let's say, inspired by his father's name, reported over. The book was divided into three sections. The first part was, in a way, similar to Der Chaim, covering subjects as with regards to Jewish tefillot, and about the religion itself. I think the second part consists of the Hebrew calendar from 1924 all the way to 2240 Common Era, which is going to be the year 6000 of the Jewish calendar, where many would say that Moshiach will have to come by that specific year in of itself. And let's just say, by calculating and authoring the Hebrew calendar, Haim Moreh recorded his name for more than 300 years as a founder and the author of the Hebrew calendar in Iran, which is a phenomenal achievement we have to point out over here. Very interesting. The third part of his book over here was contained, let's say, more original poetry in Persian and Hebrew by himself. And obviously, unfortunately, he was deprived from having the gift of sight. He was certainly able to reflect his thoughts and words on paper fluently, through assistance of his great Talmidim and friends, and including there were great people like Solomon Hayim, Mr. Shlomo Cohen Tzedek, Monsieur Brasso, who was, I think, he himself was a director of the Alliance Israelite in of its own right, we have to point out over here. Now, I think it was in the year 1928, he published his last work, which is called the Bayanat Moreh, the Words of Moreh. Unlike his other books, this was written in Persian, in Farsi, and its subject stemmed from, let's say, the beliefs and ideas or moral advice and matters of guidance. Obviously, he had this struggle in life. Remember, to not have sight, that must make things difficult. I can see the amount that he achieved without eyesight. Imagine what he could have achieved if he had the eyesight also. You can imagine. He was arguably one of the greatest Sephardic and Jewish figures in his time across the world, in my opinion. When it's that he never showed weakness. This is what the Seven Dorim website says. In the face of life's hardships and calamities, he loved. He was Persian in of its own right, so he was proud about it. He didn't hold back his love from anyone. He had an avat Yisrael, an avat for people in of its own right, and he loved to teach. He was someone that loved to teach. Rabbi Moreh was seen as a calm and serious man, as Seven Dorim points out, self-confident, with great, bright spiritual countenance. He used to advise, one of the sayings he says was, appreciate what you have and be thankful for what you've been endowed with. Now, I think it was in May 1943, I think he felt sick one day while he was before teaching class, and I think he went back to rest at home that day, He did his prayers, evening and night prayers, and gave a bracha to his family, and reportedly he passed away. He was 71 years of age, and I think it was in the month of Iyar, in the year 5703. It was in 1943. I'm not sure the exact date of his Hilula. It was, according to another opinion, on the Iranian encyclopedia website, it says that he passed away in 1942. So, but I think the Sheva Dorim website itself points out it was in the year 1943. So there's so if anyone's got more clarity or confirmation on that, I'll appreciate it. So apparently it was in May 1943, according to that. Okay, there's actually in the Encyclopedia Iranikia, so seemingly he was very well known, not just among the Jewish community in Iran, he was also among the Persian, just non-Jewish people also. He was seen as a very, very respected figure just all round, all throughout the spheres. Now, friends, we're going to take a short 1 minute break. We'll be back in 1 minute, friends. So just watch your space, and we're just going to return in 1 minute, okay? So just in the meantime, please join the channel and subscribe.
Picture
Okay, shalom everyone for being patient at the moment as we're going to continue this video over here. We're speaking about Rabbi Haim Moreh, who was a famous Chacham in Iran over there. Just so now we're going to say over what the Iranian encyclopedia actually says about him. Also, basically, going on the same lines in of itself. Remember, he had also a sister, Mandana, who we have to point out also. Obviously, their father was Rabbi Mordechai ben Eliyahu from Shiraz, and his mother's name was Rachel. Also, she was a daughter of Yadegar, who was from Isfahan. We have to point out over there. Now, the Yadegar family name itself, in Persian culture itself, is very, very well known. We have to point out. And once again, the encyclopedia itself will actually just state again that he would lose his eyesight at 2 years old, and unfortunately he suffered the loss of his father at 7 years old, and I think was raised mainly in the home of his maternal grandfather, Yadegar ben Shlomo Isfahani. Apparently was his name over there. Apparently he would study at the Bet Midrash of Rav Elazar Melamed of Yazd. So that's very interesting. So I don't think we've spoken about him before. That'll be great to know about that also. And once again, the encyclopedia will just attest that in 1898, Alliance Israelite Universal would start up their school in Tehran, where he would teach Hebrew and Torah studies in of itself. Now, it's actually, they say over also in the encyclopedia, there is a Sukkanist account of him in a travelogue of a journey to Persia by a famous geographer of Jerusalem, someone named Abraham Jacob Brora, who would visit Tehran in the year 1935. And he states over the Hebrew studies, i.e. religious lessons, are on a slightly higher level here in Tehran than in an area called Kermanasa. So remember, my family itself is from Kerman itself, so that's very interesting. From Hamadan and in Esfahan. So apparently in Tehran they have a high level, according to this traveler. Thanks to an excellent teacher by the name Mullah Chaim. So he actually testifies, this famous traveler, the greatness with regards to Chacham Haim Moreh over here with his thing. Though blind from birth or childhood, this man is most outstanding Torah scholar of all Iran's 60,000 Jews. His translations of the Tefillot, the prayers, and religious poems have been printed and are recited in synagogues in Iran. Rabbi Haim, now he says over here, Chacham Chaim, Rav Chaim spoke to me in fluent Hebrew and encountered difficulties only when I made the mistake of using newly created words such as irgun, for example. Remember, modern Hebrew was thriving at that time, with Zionism thriving all over the world, and so on and so forth. So obviously with the advent of modern Hebrew and Ivrit, so there were few words that were obviously different to the other Hebrew that was used in Judeo-Persian. This blind man teaches the very bright children and can look proudly on his work relative to the small number of hours devoted to his subjects in the curriculum. I think this is, it says over here, Mi Parashat Masotei Beharas Jerusalem in 1938, in page 23 in Hebrew. And it also quotes someone named Amnon Netzer, Yadiaz Masahir Yehude Iran, remembering Jewish notables of Iran. I think in the Patavand, Amnon Netzer, I think in Los Angeles, this was written in the year 1996, respectively, over there. Also, let's speak about, just for a minute now that we've got a live video, there was someone else that he was quite close to at that point in time, who was also very key in his story, and that was, let's say, nobleman in Iran. And we've spoken about him more. Mr. Shlomo Cohen Tzedek, I'm not sure if he was a rabbi or not. It could be he did have a rabbinic diploma. He was also known as Soliman or Solomon. He was actually born in the year 1891. And he was the older son of Mullah Yosef Cohen Zadeh, if I'm not mistaken, and the father of a religious Jewish family in Tehran. Now it's interesting, Shlomo Cohen Tzedek would actually learn in the Alliance Israelite Universal also. It was also called the Alliance Israel Etehed School of Tehran. When he was 18 years of age, he received his high school diploma in Persian and in French languages, we have to point out. And it was from the Sa'id school, where he stayed to teach. Even, I think, as a young child, he had been bringing in income at that point in time, and now he spent what he earned to support the family, including his 3 sisters and a little brother. Now, I think it was in the year 1911 he received his high school diploma. He was employed by we're talking now about Mr. Shlomo Tzedek also, because we're speaking about Rabbi Haim Moreh over here, but I thought it's relevant because he was also a key person in that point in time, and he was, I think, close to Rabbi Haim Moreh also. So we'll just speak about Mr. Cohen Tzedek over here. He was employed by the Gendarmeria, the large outer city policing branch of the Iranian army. I think he would serve there for 7 years. So this would help him build relationships, let's just say, with the Persian nobles in of its own right. He was passionate also about social, Torah, cultural affairs in of itself. I think he resigned from his military position and began working at cultural institutions. When he was 26, he formed a 13-member council of youngsters, founding the first cultural movement of the young Jews of Tehran, to which he was elected president for 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think afterwards he would have consistent efforts. He would open several other branches in most Iranian towns with the Jewish community. I think they would aim to teach Hebrew, promote and spread Jewish religious law and knowledge, to unify the Jews of Iran and to encourage them to connect with the Jews of other countries. Now, it's interesting, he would get married, Mr. Shlomo Cohen Tzedek, to Gohar. Also, Gohar is known as Jewel, from the Bakhaj family, if I'm not mistaken, and they would have, Mr. Shlomo Tzedek would have 4 daughters and 2 sons. And I think the sons' names was Yitzhak and Yosef Cohen Tzedek, who would both become very prominent people also in Iran, if I'm not mistaken. Now it's actually interesting, Mr. Shlomo Cohen Tzedek is considered one of the founding members of the Tehran Jewish Association, and I think he arranged the very first meeting to be convened at his house until a dedicated location, let's just say, would be found for, let's say, the nascent organization in of its own right, like seating guests, wooden benches, which was covered in Persian carpets at the point in time, and was placed around, let's say, a central hall or house of the courtyard on the Odlajan neighborhood, the Jewish ghetto in of its own right. And I think there was a time period of 2 world wars which would affect the entire world. He was assigned career-related tasks that would take him to towns and cities all around the world. In each city, town, village, well, I think he assessed and took care of the living conditions of the Jewish people. He would also study the Jewish history over there in its own state. I think Mr. Cohen Tzedek, for 22 years, from 1919 to 1941, he had professional trips, would go, which was various different hardships within regards to social conditions in the country, very difficult to tough times. There was dangerous roads, not proper transportation, but still he was able to travel very successfully. Reported over, Mr. Shlomo Tzedek would travel around 180 Iranian towns and cities, and to collect, let's say at that point in time, statistical, historical, cultural and social data on Iranian Jewish communities in all corners of the country. He would go abroad to Iraq, to Jerusalem, to Egypt and France, and he visited some of the largest libraries reported over. He completed research at that point in time, set out to write a comprehensive history of the Jewish communities of Iran from 70 years before the rule of Cyrus the Great to the reign of Pahlavi. And I think this specific, unique work will become one of the most important sources for Dr. Habib Levy in writing his own Jewish history of the Jews of Iran, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I think it was in the year 1924, Mr. Shlomo Tzedek joined a group of Iranian Jews to make famous pilgrimage to Eretz Israel. And shortly afterwards, he returned to his homeland, Iran, and would begin as a head of accounting of the Danish firm campsacks, which held a contract with the government of Iran to construct the national railroad. So you can see it really took a lot of very important undertakings in Iran in its own right. So you can see these people like Rabbi Haim Moreh, Mr. Shlomo Cohen Tzedek, the greatness, the amount they achieved at that point in time. He was also fluent in Persian, French, English and Hebrew, and was known as an outstanding, beloved scholar and speaker, very closely familiar with the social problems, the cultural problems that faced Iranian Jews. Now, in 1946, he was recommended by the executive board of Tehran Jewish Association. There was a famous Polish rabbi at that point in time, Harav Levi. He was actually in Iran in itself to help Polish refugees in the Second World War for cooperation in cultural affairs, and there was great efforts, such as the great erudite figures. They would actually open up Otzah HaTorah school network, which was established there, and the foundation opened several other branches in various different Iranian towns, which is very, very interesting. And it was under the name Ganjeh Danish, the treasure of knowledge, a school system in of its own self. It's actually interesting. Mr. Shlomo Tzedek, so remember, Otzah HaTorah opened 3 years after Rabbi Haim Moreh had passed away. We have to point that over there. And it's interesting. Rabbi Shlomo Tzedek, Cohen Tzedek, was elected as the first president of Otzah HaTorah Culture Center. He qualified people, set up 2 educational seminars to train experienced teachers. He would send them far away from around the country to teach various religious Jewish subjects. And it was a great Jewish school system, let's just say, in its own right. We're just going to take a short break for a minute and we'll come back. Hello? 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 כן, מי זה? מה? אנחנו צריך לשלם את זה או... לא, אני לא רוצה שום דבר. תודה. Okay, sorry about that. Just okay. So yes, so he would be. His name also was Sultan Suleiman. We have to point out he completed various different books. Also, we have to point out. Let's just say a self-teaching guide to Hebrew. I think this was in the year 1915. It would be later used as a textbook in the Alliance Etihad Israeli schools. He would publish other great works in and of itself. The History of Iranian Jews in 2 volumes, which was one of the main references used by Dr. Habib Levi, who we've spoken about here in this series, in writing his own History of the Jews of Iran. There was a book on Hebrew grammar, collections of poems and lyrics by famed Jewish poets of Iran. There was interpretations of dreams by Daniel the Prophet. There would be a book in 2 volumes he'd write, the Ginzei Sedek, which covered the Jewish code as well as moral lessons and anecdotes. The Emunat Sedek, which provides answers and explanations to some of religious codes of Jewish holy books. And I think it's interesting, in 1941, Mr. Shlomo Tzedek began to realize one of Iranian Jews' cherished dreams, and I'm reading this from the 7 Dorim website, as for the first time, he began to calculate, author, and edit the first Hebrew calendar. Remember, and we talked about Haim Moreh, who would be, let's say, the rabbi behind this in of itself. So there was a very close connection between Rabbi Haim Moreh and Mr. Shlomo Tzedek over here, especially with his calendar over there. And I think he actually paid Mr. Cohen Tzedek for the calendar from his own expense and provided it for the public. In later years, his son, Isaac Cohen Tzedek, would continue to publish his work with corresponding dates in Persian, in Gregorian, and in Arabic calendars, as well as marking of salient days and events. He was known as Sultan Suleiman. He was a religious scholar, a historian, a cultural figure, and a philanthropist who spent 55 years of his life in cultural, Jewish, religious, social activities, 30 years of which included great service to Otzah HaTorah. Now, I believe he passed away, actually. It was in the year 1964. It was on 27th of Av on the Hebrew calendar. I think he suffered from heart condition at that point in time. So please, at the time period of his Hilula, it's all the way towards the end of Av, don't forget to light a candle in his memory. And it was a special edition over here where we spoke about Chacham Haim Moreh. I actually was privileged enough to meet one of his descendants yesterday. I travel around different yeshivot all over Israel, and I met a descendant of his, and very, very interesting. And please, everyone who've tuned in live over here, please subscribe to the channel now and join our community. We're, I think, one of the only places over here across the world that in the English language that really celebrate and explore the lives of various different great rabbis from the Sephardi countries, Oriental countries, and so on and so forth. So wishing you a fantastic day. Take care, and thanks for watching.